We know who we are, but not who we might become. If we shadows have offended, think for his and all is mended. That you have but slumber here, while these visions did appear. I like this place, and would willingly waste my time in it. If music be the food of love, play on, out spot. Shakespeare is one of the most famous playwrights that's ever lived. His works still impact us today, and they're relevant through most of our culture.
Okay. He was thought to be born on April 23rd, 1564. Oh, no. Okay. And it has where this is actually a picture of the script where they write down what day they're baptized and what day that they die. And it had red arrows to it, but I don't think I got them in the picture. He's somewhere right around here. And the death is right here, somewhere. And so that's the actual thing that I got to take a picture of. He was baptized April 26th, and that's why they think that he was born April 23rd, because they usually baptize within 3 days of their birth. He died April 23rd, 1616 at 52 years old. He was born and brought up in Stratford-upon-Avon, a riverside town. That's his house right there that he grew up in and lived in most of his life. And his parents were John and Mary. They were a wealthy family. He was the third of 8 children and the oldest surviving male. He was thought to have been educated at the King's New School in Stratford. At 18, he married Anne Hathaway on November 27, 1582, who was already 3 months pregnant when they got married with their first child, Susanna. And 2 years later, they had the twins, Judith and Hamnet. And Hamnet died at 11 years old due to unknown causes. There have been lots of questions on whether his works of poetry were actually his or whether he was a fake name, but it's mostly accepted that it was his. Shakespeare died within a month of signing his will, and on his will he said that he was in perfect health. Obviously not. They don't know why he died, but both of his daughters died without having any male children. Susanna had 3 girls, and all of them died without marrying, and Judith had 1 girl who married twice but didn't have any kids. So Shakespeare has no descendants. Shakespeare left a specific quote in his will intending to leave his second best bed to his wife. And no one really knows exactly why he did that, but there are 2 theories that are very commonly known, that it was either an insult to her, or the more commonly accepted one is that was their matrimonial bed, so that's why it was more for sentimental value. This is his inside of his house. Obviously, this isn't the real stuff that was in there when he was there, but it's like what they think it looked like. He has a window that guests would come in and sign because they kind of realized that he was starting to get famous and stuff, so they would come in and sign it. And there was just a lot of signatures on it. All right, he was buried at Holy Trinity Church, and a lot of people are buried there. As you can see, that's only like a very small portion. It's still an active church today. There are many tombstones outside the church beside the pathway to enter. It has a really, really tiny door where you have to walk through and you have to duck to get under the door if you have any height. I think Mr. Rose made it fine. And yeah, it's really short and there's an awkward little step. So it's obviously made from I don't know, it was weird. But Shakespeare was rich and well-liked, so he was actually buried, instead of out here with all the other tombs, he was actually buried inside of the church. Right there. He's buried right there, inside the church. And he's also buried with, I think it's his granddaughter, one of his daughter's husbands, I think one other person, I'm not sure who else it was. That he was very superstitious, and many people were in this time period. He was also very cocky and thought someone wanted to steal his bones, so he wrote an epitaph for his tomb that said in modern spelling, "Good friend, for Jesus' sake forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he who removes my bones.
Okay, I'm going to give some context about Shakespeare's life. He lived in London for most of his writing career when he wrote his plays, and he had his acting troupe change their name to the King's Men from the Chamberlain's Men when the king came into power, because before it was the Queen. And a rival, Robert Greene, called Shakespeare an upstart crowd, which seems like an insult, but it also proves that he was becoming well known, and early playwriting was halted due to an outbreak of the plague, but 2 poems did come out of it. He wrote Venus and Adonis and The Rape of Lucrece, and he was survived by his 2 daughters in life, but no one has ever stepped forward to claim their descendants to him. And the bulk of his estate went to Susanna, his eldest daughter, and it is weird that he wrote his own epitaph, which is the thing she already said, which is on his grave. And during Shakespeare's career, it was King James I who came to the throne in 1603, who became a good friend of Shakespeare. When he came to the throne, he issued a royal license to Shakespeare and his fellow players, organizing them as the King's Men. And Shakespeare actually translated large sections of the Bible for King James, and hence the name of that Bible, because it's named after King James. And Shakespeare's
Okay, Shakespeare was a really well-known dramatist and poet. He had a lot of manuscripts, but unfortunately none of them have ever survived, or they haven't found any, well, his original ones. The scholars have really worked closely to try to find editions that were his and handwritten, but they haven't found any quite yet. There's 37 plays that are what they regard as his actual writing. He worked with other playwrights throughout his life, but they're not only his. The ones that are his are Macbeth, Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet. Those are some of his really famous ones that he wrote when, I think it was King James I was in power, is when he wrote those. He established himself as an actor and a playwright in 1594 when he became a shareholder in Lord Chamberlain's Men in London. And then shortly after that, I think it was within the first couple of years, they built the Globe Theatre, and that's when they worked there. He remained a member of the company for the rest of his career, and he often played for Queen Elizabeth. And then some of his most well-known, plays for her were Richard II, A Midsummer's Night Dream, and then The Merchant of Venice. And those were kind of what started his big success. When he was when the plague happened and everything, there wasn't very many plays that came out. He kind of had to stop because the theater wasn't open, so he just had to write, and then he wrote for the Duke who employed him. I can't quite remember his name. And then in 1609 through 1611, some of Shakespeare's sonnets were published, but he didn't live to see the first folio being actually published, which is sad. Thank you.